I'm critiquing the character design of every giant monster that appears in a Toho-produced movie and their redesigns and iterations throughout the years. And today, we're looking at Rodan. A lot of early Toho kaiju kind of suffer from the same problem, is that they can kind of be boiled down to just an inaccurate prehistoric animal. For instance, Anguirus was kind of just an inaccurate ankylosaur, an inaccurate giant Meganeura, and now a inaccurate pterosaur. Rodan starts out as just kind of an inaccurate pterosaur. There's a couple issues with him, but first off, I want to say what I like about it. I appreciate how the film depicts them like a real species. There's two of them. Every Godzilla monster kind of feels like it's a character, like this is Veron, this is Anguirus. It doesn't really feel like a species, but Rodan depicts them as two individuals, like they're a couple, they're a mating pair, and it makes them feel a lot more real. It makes them feel a lot more historic and natural in the world. And on top of that, they use the Meganulon as a food source. There's like a circle of life thing going on. It all feels very natural. It feels like this is like a real animal species. But like, you know, this is just kind of an awkward design. The Rodans, they can't fold their wings in. Their wings are always just outstretched, just always. So when they're walking around, they look kind of ridiculous. I know it was a limitation of the time, probably. It was a budget limitation and stuff, but the fact that their wings can't fold in, it makes the design feel a little lazy. In the rest of the Showa Era, Rodan doesn't change all too much, but the thing that I want to highlight is his color scheme. You see, Rodan, he has this kind of cool gradient from brown to tan. It's neat, it looks visually nice, but it's a little boring, you know, it's a little unfortunate because like I would have wanted something a little more colorful, something more flamboyant. But it makes sense because it's an Earth kaiju. In Destroy All Monsters, there's actually this brilliant detail where all of the good guy kaiju, you know, all of the kaiju from Earth are mostly in Earth tones. They're grays, they're browns, they're blacks, they're kind of muddy greens, you know, it's like all these Earth tones. And then King Ghidorah, who's the alien, the bad guy, he is this bright yellow, this flamboyant color. And Mothra typically has these flamboyant colors too, but in Destroy All Monsters, you only see Mothra larva. So again, it's this brown, it's an earth tone. So it makes sense on that thematic level for Rodan to have these earth tones, but it just doesn't feel very vibrant. I want it to feel a little bit more oomph, you know what I mean? Muddy brown isn't a very interesting color. And then in versus Mechagodzilla II, I love the upgrade that they give Rodan. He's a little slimmer, you know, more agile. He's a little bit more scientifically accurate, though fantastical. He kind of looks a little bit more realistic as a pterosaur. He kind of moves around in a more natural way. But then also, he's more like dragon-like. They are starting to experiment with his design where they're taking a pterosaur and combining it with dragon qualities to make Rodan. I think that's an excellent direction to take the character. For instance, his horns and back spines are a lot more pronounced. His beak and eyebrows are in this like permanent snarl. And then his colors are still brown and tan, but the brown is darker and the tan is brighter, giving better contrast. I see, this is how you're supposed to do the color design to make it earth tones, but still have it stand out, have it contrast better. This looks a lot better. And then he has this upgraded form in the movie called Fire Rodan. And he doesn't actually change too much, but this brown color turns into a red color, enforcing the fire theming on him. As well as now you can see the blood veins in his wings a little bit better. You could see them before, but now they're just a lot more pronounced. And then he also has this uranium heat ray, which is like this purple pink color. And to be honest with you, I kind of wish that Fire Rodan had more fire related abilities, because as is, Fire Rodan doesn't really use fire. He's red colored, but that's about it. He has this like purple pink ray, but that doesn't really say fire. I would have preferred him to have, instead of this uranium heat ray, I would have preferred him to have some kind of fire breath or a fireball or something like that, or something, even go crazy with it. You could even have him have napalm spray as a breath if you want. Have something really unique and fun there. But they just kind of have him have a beam. It's a unique color, and I appreciate the unique color, but, you know, it's just kind of a beam. And if you're gonna keep that like purple pink ray, it kind of comes out of nowhere. So you could have his color scheme represent that color by giving him maybe purple and pink highlights or making his eyes pink or something like that. But as is, it's like fine. And then we have Final Wars. I hate this. I hate this is gross. What is this, like, Zone Fighter Go Greenman looking ass monster, you know? Final Wars is a big love letter to the Showa era, so it makes sense that they would revert his design back to being a lot more in his Showa design. But it looks bad. It looks bad, especially the colors. I don't know what they were thinking with the colors. He looks really bad. Though the one thing I really like about this design is his armor plating on his belly. So Rodan has this ability where he swoops down against the kaiju and he kind of snags them as he goes by. So he'll scratch them with his talons or his beaks, or oftentimes he has these like spikes on his chest which he scrapes by on a kaiju as he flies past. That's a very prominent ability of Rodan in these movies. So to have him not only have armor plating on his belly where he's constantly ramming himself into kaiju, but then also having those armor plates point into spikes, that's a really good idea. That's a great innovation for Rodan as a character and how he fights. Now, it's Monsterverse Rodan. And I need to be very clear here. The chase scene with Rodan in King of the Monsters is, in my personal opinion, my favorite scene in the entire Godzilla franchise. So I'm gonna try to talk about Rodan in a little bit more of a neutral way, just to talk about his critique as a character design. But understand that I go feral for this design. So in versus Mechagodzilla II, we get Rodan as a dragon pterosaur hybrid, and they do a pretty okay job combining the two. But here, they do a fantastic job. He's introduced as the fire demon. He's hibernating in a fucking volcano. When he flies, there's like fire and cinder and smoke trailing off his wings. His skin is like this rock texture, and you can see as he comes out the volcano, there's this like molten magma in the cracks of his skin. And when he flies, he feels so heavy, not only because he looks like he's made of rock, but also every movement is given so much weight, you know? And like, as he flies, there's a lot of focus on the wind in his wake, of Rodan flying past the city and the wind rupturing past behind him. And it's like, that wind is just a byproduct of Rodan existing. That's just Rodan flying as a byproduct, absolutely destroying this entire city. So it's just like, here's a little snippet of just like a part of his power. Like, that's a byproduct of his power. Imagine his power when he's actually exerting himself on it. It's incredible. And then on top of that, he feels so heavy, and yet he's performing these like impossible maneuvers. He's like flapping up, jolting himself up into the air. He's dive bombing, and he's barrel rolling. Fucking Rodan barrel rolling. Like, this thing feels so heavy, and yet he's performing these impossible maneuvers. It makes him feel so mystical and powerful. And his personality is engraved on his very face. His beak is permanently molded in this like grin, and like the skin past his beak can smile a little bit more when he has a particularly like dastardly idea. This Rodan is so fun. But if I had one complaint with this design, again, it's his color scheme. His color scheme is this muddy brown. It's just not that interesting to me as a color choice. Look, it does contrast well with the magma orange that is in the cracks of his skin and stuff. It does contrast well with that, but it's just not particularly interesting, the muddy brown. I would have preferred something a little bit more flamboyant, though, you know, in the Monsterverse, every kaiju, save for Mothra, has more muted color schemes. They're a little bit more grounded and muted. So it fits the Monsterverse fine, I guess. It's just me personally, I'm sick of this muddy brown Rodan. And then in Singular Point, we have this version of Rodan. They base this off of the Quetzalcoatl? Wait, fuck, how do you pronounce this shit? That's not what I wanted. That is not the pronounce button. Quetzalcoatlus. And then in Singular Point, we have this design for Rodan, which is largely based off of Quetzalcoatlus. Toho has always struggled with scientific accuracy when it comes to reconstructing these ancient prehistoric animals. So for Singular Point, when all of these designs are a lot more dinosaur-like, a lot more realistic, they chose Rodan to be based off of the largest flying animal that has ever existed, the Quetzalcoatlus. And that's a really good choice. But this is just a Quetzalcoatlus. It's not even that big. It's about as big as the real-life version. This is just a prehistoric animal. And look, that's fine for the show. It's just boring. Like, this isn't Rodan. This is a Quetzalcoatlus. Now, one thing you think I might mention is his color scheme. And yeah, I appreciate the color scheme here. It's not muddy brown and tan. His color scheme is like this fire Rodan red with blue and like yellow and stuff. Like, this is a very beautiful looking Rodan. Though it might run the risk a little bit of looking like a Rodan clown, I still appreciate the color variation. And then you also have this more traditionally colored Rodan, and seeing them side to side, I actually kind of wish that they had a mix of the two, where it's like maybe using brown as a base and then putting blues and reds in there to highlight or something like that. But you know, as is, I appreciate how they put both in. That was a really good choice to really mix up the colors with one and then keep the original with another. That was a really solid choice. And then you have this like black Rodan. He's like made of smoke or something. It's pretty rad, not gonna lie. It's pretty on theme for the dragon and fire theming of Rodan. I especially like how his cinders against the smoke look like stars on like a black night sky. That's a very beautiful detail. In general, Rodan kind of suffers from being created as just an inaccurate pterosaur. And they kind of try to play with this along with his designs in Singular Point to make him as accurate as possible, but then they give him one variation which is very mystical and creative. I appreciate that. And then in versus Mechagodzilla II, they really combine the pterosaur idea with the dragon idea. I think that was a great direction to take the character. But dude, Monsterverse has no competition. Monsterverse is just like so perfect in so many different ways except for his color scheme. It's just like, it is so good, it's so amazing, it's fun, it's unique, it's powerful. Monsterverse is peak.